Xinjiang and said there should be a resolution at the Council to this effect. Wang says China welcomes people in business, the Mobile World Congress in Shanghai. In sports, Manchester City continues its dominance. In culture and entertainment, two classic cartoon characters are staging a comeback. Now the day's top stories. China's expressed firm opposition to British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab's remarks on Xinjiang at the 46th session of the UN Human Council. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin has responded.
英方所谓就此通过决议的说法，显然是别有用心。
The British side's adoption of a resolution on this issue obviously has ulterior motives. Its purpose is to confuse the public and discredit China, and to undermine the cooperation between China and the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. We are firmly opposed to this.
Raab has called for UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet or another independent expert to be given urgent and unfettered access to Xinjiang, and said there should be a resolution at the Council to this effect. Wang says China welcomes people from all over the world to visit Xinjiang. The spokesperson says in recent years, more than 1,200 diplomats, officials from international organizations, journalists, and religious figures from more than 100 countries have visited Xinjiang upon invitation. Foreign Ministry spokesperson says the return of the United States to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and the lifting of sanctions against Iran holds the key to breaking the impasse on the Iranian nuclear issue.
当前伊核问题局势处在关键节点，机遇和挑战并存。
The current situation of the Iranian nuclear issue is at a critical juncture with both opportunities and challenges. China believes that the return of the U.S. to the JCPOA and the lifting of sanctions on Iran are the keys to breaking the stalemate of the Iranian nuclear issue.
Iran announced on Tuesday that it'll immediately restrict on-site inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Wang Wenbin says China attaches great significance to the Iranian nuclear issue. The spokesperson says China will continue to preserve the JCPOA and work for the resumption of full and effective compliance at an early date to maintain peace and stability in the Middle East. The Chinese foreign minister says the country is ready to enhance anti-pandemic cooperation with Sri Lanka. Wang Yi told his Sri Lankan counterpart over the phone that bilateral relations maintained strong momentum as the two countries fought against COVID-19 last year. Sri Lankan diplomat said that his country appreciates China's stance on human rights issues and is willing to help safeguard fairness and justice in regional and international affairs. The first batch of Sinovac vaccine from China has arrived in Singapore. Singapore has made advanced purchase agreements with Sinovac in addition to two other vaccine companies. The city-state government said earlier they're still assessing the Sinovac vaccine before it's rolled out to the public. Clinics across Hungary have begun using China's Sinopharm vaccine, making it the first European Union country to provide the jab. The vaccine is being offered to Hungarians over the age of 60 as part of the second phase of the country's vaccination campaign. Doctors' offices across the country have received between 50 and 55 doses each. The first of 4 deliveries of the Sinopharm vaccine arrived in Budapest last week, containing 550,000 vials. The remainder of the 5 million doses, enough to inoculate a quarter of Hungary's population, will be delivered by the end of May. Meanwhile, members of the European Council will meet via video conference today to discuss the current situation of the COVID-19 pandemic and preparedness for health threats. With more on this, we spoke to Dr. George Zagopoulos, director of the EU-China program at the International Center for European Studies in Greece. What should be the EU's focus for coordinating the pandemic response among its member countries?
The current priority of the European Union is to accelerate the rhythm of vaccination. What we do observe is that Europe currently is lagging behind in comparison to other countries like the United Kingdom, the United States, and Israel. So this is the most important priority and what the European leaders need to deal with in order to respond to the needs of citizens who are staying home due to lockdown measures. Beyond this, there are obviously other questions, and the most important one will be the discussion about a potential green passport that will allow traveling during the summer period. But for this to happen, obviously the vaccination will be the top priority.
Yeah, but
What are the
getting vaccine
possibilities
doesn't mean
of
you
more
can't
EU
spread the
members
virus.
using the COVID-19 vaccines
missed
from
the point
China
completely.
or Russia?
Well, what is happening is that
I take this white shit out of
the
my eyes
European
and my nose
Union
and spread it on
needs
your mask.
to
You will
follow
be very
some
sick.
rules. Authorization is
Pretty sure.
required, and from the moment the current pace of vaccination is not very satisfactory, I wouldn't exclude the possibility of discussing
I'd be able to clear this shit out of my system
usage of
faster if I had
vaccines from
fresh air.
either Russia or China. Hungary, for example, has already done so, while beyond the European Union, Serbia also
So if you're going to just talk about vaccines, we're going to skip ahead 60 seconds.
drawing on previous experience. I don't believe that a holistic and
You just
united
skipped a minute out of
approach
this.
will be followed. What I would expect is that the
Like
member states
diatribe.
themselves, the 6 member states, will continuously follow their national policies, which they consider as
I got a great
necessary
time
in order
physics
to
book here
protect
that
their
argues
citizens
with
from
you
the
in,
virus.
in
That was
I
Dr.
believe
George
in
Zagopoulos,
this
director of the EU-China
have to quote
program at
before
the
I was really
International
fucking
Center
bad.
for European Studies in Greece, talking about the pandemic response in Europe. Zimbabwe is inoculating frontline healthcare workers with China's Sinopharm vaccine. Farai Mwakatuya reports from Harare.
For the past year, Dr. Tendai Chaiva, a casualty doctor at Zimbabwe's largest referral hospital, has relied on her mask, hand sanitizer, and social distancing to avoid contracting COVID-19. But on this day, she's getting a second systemic shield, the Sinopharm vaccine.
It doesn't mean that if you get vaccinated, you should relax and just do away with all the precautions everybody has been taking for quite some time now. So we just do that, but I guess you just have that knowledge that your body is starting to develop some antibodies against this COVID-19. So it sort of gives you an assurance that you're protected.
She's among dozens of health professionals who often come face to face with the pandemic who are now getting inoculated.
I work in one of the COVID facilities in Harare. I've seen people die literally in front of me. I've just been fortunate that I haven't gotten it yet, but I needed this vaccine so that I can feel protected.
Zimbabwe's vaccination rollout began on February 18th amidst some public misgivings about the jabs. Authorities have moved to reassure the public, maintaining that the government will
Misgivings,
only buy
that's the word. You're
vaccines
trying to turn
that
it
are
into
effective
mistrust and
and safe.
hesitancy.
Frontline workers are
Misgivings
urging
might be
those still in
appropriate.
doubt to follow their lead.
People always say a lot of things about vaccines. Every time that there's a vaccination that is going on, whether it's schools, whether anyway, there's a lot that's always said. But talking as a healthcare provider, if we are going to fight COVID as a nation, we need to get vaccinated. And this is why I've led by example. I'm here today. I got the vaccine because
all these
I want
people should
this
also be
country
asked
to get rid
follow-up
of,
questions. What about the variants that it doesn't
COVID.
work on?
Zimbabwe plans to vaccinate 10 million people, about 60% of its population, which it says will help the country achieve herd immunity against the virus.
That was Farai Mwakatuya reporting from Zimbabwe. Coming up, China says it's ready to strengthen economic and trade ties with the United States.
We haven't figured out yet. These variants are new in humans, but the presumption is they mutated inside humans. What if they infect animals and then come back
all around the world
with some crazy shit? This isn't crazy.
After receiving a notice from the United Nations,
Citywide testing is the best and ultimate way to curb Hong Kong's outbreak of COVID. We give you the why and the how behind the stories so you can better understand the reactions of those involved.
More than 63 billion people have been affected by all of TikTok's middle to senior level
Who knows on a dinner plate that every single friend. Subscribe to The Top Story to learn more about the world in which we're living and the future we all share on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen.
It's 12 minutes past the hour. Chinese officials say the country is ready to strengthen exchanges with the United States in economic and trade fields. Commerce Minister Wang Wentao says the essence of Sino-U.S. economic and trade relations is mutual benefit and win-win results, and cooperation is the only correct choice for the two sides. Despite the global trade slump due to the COVID-19 pandemic, trade between China and the United States bucked the trend. Customs data shows that the bilateral trade of goods went up 8.8% in 2020. The official also says China is the largest trading partner of the United States, and the bilateral trade and investment cooperations contributed to their respective economic recoveries. China is expected to conduct more than 40 space launches this year. An official report says the construction of China's space station will enter a crucial stage this year, and China's Mars probe Tianwen-1 is due to complete its orbiting, landing, and roving operations. The report also says China will launch a number of satellites for civil space infrastructure. The core module of China's space station is expected to be launched this spring. 11 missions to build China's space station are planned this year and next year. China conducted 39 space launches last year, sending 89 craft into space.
Oh, I've been hearing this story.
China's hailing the results of its targeted poverty alleviation plan. Wen Jie has more.
By the end of last year, China had lifted over 800 counties, 120,000 villages, and nearly 100 million people out of poverty. Authorities are trying to make sure that everyone receives the exact help they need. In November 2013, Chinese President Xi Jinping first raised the concept of targeted poverty alleviation during an inspection tour in Hunan province. The first step is to locate poverty through accurate identification, which means specifying survey data by matching it with individuals and households. Director Zheng Nengui of the Poverty Alleviation Office of Region County, Jiangxi Province, says they need to go door to door to investigate family conditions.
If a household with no paper bodies cannot afford school or medical care, then they are considered to be impoverished.
After identifying those in poverty, the next step is to help them earn an income, such as through farming or selling agricultural products. First Secretary Liu Junping of Huangchong Village, Anhui Province, says they help villagers look for specific jobs.
Anyone who wants to be involved in the plan will be given the necessary resources. We'll see what they can do and who are suitable for what kind of jobs, then we'll help them achieve their goals.
Over 300,000 industrial bases in farming, planting, and processing have been constructed in impoverished villages across China as part of their industrial plans to fight against poverty. Some poverty-hit counties have cooperated with companies to form a production and selling industrial chain. Gao Yunfei from a food processor in Yibin County, Sichuan Province, says his company has helped villagers earn income through purchasing farm produce from them.
The higher amount of products we sell, the higher demand we will seek from the farmers. For example, if the sales of our roast duck increased by 200,000 yuan, we will purchase duck worth 100,000 yuan from the farmers. And we will sell 100 tons of tofu, we will buy 40 tons of beans from our farmers.
Wang Sangui with the Poverty Alleviation Expert Group of China's State Council explains that the special targeted poverty alleviation path is suitable for China, which has a huge population.
Previously, our poverty alleviation plan targeted different regions. The problem was those who are really impoverished in the poor region failed to receive help. For example, we may have built a road in the region for everyone, but those who are really poor didn't have anything to sell, so they wouldn't use it. So targeted poverty alleviation can help people receive specific help.
Meanwhile, lots of funds have also been put into education for the impoverished. About 200,000 students who dropped out of school due to poverty have now returned. Since 2016, almost 20 million people have been included in the subsistence allowance system. For the Beijing Hour, I'm Wen Jie.
A recent divorce case in Beijing has caused discussion about compensation for housework. Fei Fei has the story.
A divorce case in Beijing resulted in the husband paying 50,000 yuan or $7,700 in compensation for the housework undertaken by his wife, who is a stay-at-home mom. The judge of the case, Feng Miao, explained her verdict.
The compensation value is based on the time span of their marriage, the wife's amount of housework, the husband's income, and the average local living standards.
It's the first such verdict after the civil code took effect in China this year. According to the code, the person who takes on more responsibilities in taking care of children, the elderly, or assists with others in the family has the right to ask for compensations in a divorce. The compensation is not part of the joint property shared by the couple. Associate Professor Long Jun from Tsinghua University says the provision aims to protect the one who shares more around the house. They often personally give up professional and educational development.
The one who spends more time on work can continue to enjoy their social resources, positions, and level of income. Those normally won't change after divorce. But the one who stays around the house more will face new problems when returning to the professional field after a divorce. In the Civil Code, the compensation for housework aims to provide extra support in the future, except for the division of property.
For the public, some applaud the verdict, while others doubt how housework should be valued. It's reasonable. She's a stay-at-home mom and definitely has more responsibility around the house. She didn't go out to work and had no income. I think she should be compensated.
She stays at home for the whole family. He goes out to work also for the family. He also works hard, and his income is not only used on himself. It doesn't make sense to compensate.
I think it depends on how you define housework. If the woman does more of the housework and she can provide evidence, then I think the law should be on her side.
Experts say the debate can bring awareness to the value of housework, which is normally ignored when compared to salaries and professional development. It also increases the respect to those who work around the house daily. For the Beijing Hour, this is Fei Fei.
More and more Chinese dramas are being remade in foreign markets, especially in neighboring Asian countries. Juju has more.
After years of China remaking Korean dramas, some Chinese shows are now being adapted for South Korea and becoming a hit in the country. No Touch Princess, adapted from Chinese online series Go Princess Go, achieved a TV viewing rate of over 14%, ranking #1 across all Korean channels. Chinese dramas have been welcomed by audiences in other Asian countries such as Thailand and Japan as well. Local viewers say it is because they share similar cultural backgrounds with Chinese people.
We have a game based on the romance of three kingdoms called Dynasty Warriors, and an anime called Kingdom of Warriors.
Back in history, we have a lot of interactions together. Most Korean historical dramas have some kind of Chinese history context. Last month, both Vietnam and South Korea decided to remake the famous TV series Nothing But 30. Back in 2019, Thai drama Fleet of Time, adapted from the Chinese series of the same name, not only aired in Thailand and China, but also in other Southeast Asian countries, including Singapore and Brunei. Thailand has also decided to adapt another Chinese hit drama, Boss and Me. Chinese screenwriter Shi Hang says to earn more of the market share globally, Chinese dramas must improve their quality.
When we watch Tokyo Love Story, we know what standard Japanese series have. When we watch British TV series, we learn about their standard. Chinese drama has been welcomed in some countries, but its market share is still far lower than Korean series. We have to shoot some good quality dramas that we Chinese people love, and then we can introduce it to other countries.
However, some dramas such as A Love So Beautiful that was adapted by South Korea haven't garnered much attention in the country. Hu Jianli with the China Film Critics Association says it was because its producers didn't revise the plots to cater to the country's local interest.
To promote those remakes, producers need to briefly revise the plots based on the original story and character design. It is very important to localize those details in dramas. Remakes are also a form of creation. They need to have their own soul.
Chinese historical costume dramas
This must be the
remain
most
the most
interesting in the
popular
world for you when
genre
you do
of
this to
Chinese
small
dramas
children,
going
right,
global.
Detective Diddler?
Other popular genres include teen dramas, soap operas, and comedy. For the Beijing Hour, I'm Zhu.
Coming up, a made-in-Cuba COVID vaccine. Cuba is poised to become the first Latin American country to produce its own COVID-19 vaccine. Luis Torino reports from Havana.
Cuba is about to commence mass production of its COVID-19 vaccine called Soberana 02 after a final phase of testing that begins next month. Its final hurdle before government approval. Cuba expects to produce enough to immunize its entire population of around 11 million people, with plenty to spare. Soberana 02, along with 3 other COVID vaccines in development, are products of a homegrown biotech industry that has exported vaccines against diseases like meningitis and hepatitis B to more than 40 countries.
For Cubans, the locally developed vaccine projects translate into the hope to finally get rid of the coronavirus disease as they feel proud of the island's scientific community.
It's been a very big effort by our scientists. Very few countries have made such an achievement like Cuba has. And when vaccination starts, we will see the positive results of all of this.
We must praise our scientists who are making a big effort for us to prevent Cubans from dying and to help us kill this epidemic that is hitting us so hard. So I hope sooner rather than later we will all be immunized and happy.
The priority is vaccinating Cubans, but scientists here say Cuba also may donate vaccines to poor countries as part of its long-standing practice of healthcare diplomacy. Profits is not the point.
We are not a multinational where return on investment is the #1 priority and providing health comes second. We operate the other way round. We first create health and revenues are a consequence of that, never a priority.
Next month's phase 3 trials will involve more than 42,000 people. If successful, Cuba says it could deliver its first 1 million doses of its COVID-19 vaccine in late April.
And that was Luis Torino reporting from Havana.
So goddamn right.
U.S. President Joe Biden's met with a bipartisan group of lawmakers to discuss critical supply chain issues facing the country.
Last year has shown the vulnerability we have in some of the supply chain, including the PPE that we needed badly but had to go far to get. And there are current strategies of these little chips here for automobiles causing some lines to slow down and people not being laid off, but at least shorten the shift.
So I don't know what all
the meeting occurred shortly before Biden signed an executive order to review U.S. supply chains and boost domestic manufacturing jobs. The order will focus on 4 critical products, such as semiconductor chips, large capacity batteries for electric vehicles, rare earth minerals, and pharmaceuticals. It'll also direct 6 sector reviews for defense, public health and biological preparedness, information communications, technology, energy, and food production. The United States is being besieged by PPE supply shortages since the onset of the pandemic, while chip shortages have cost jobs in the auto industry. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer says her administration will announce plans to further loosen coronavirus restrictions in the state. She says the state is making good progress in its COVID-19 vaccine rollout, with over 1.9 million people having received shots so far.
We are making steady progress toward our goal of equitably vaccinating 70% of Michiganders ages 16 and up. To date, we have administered 1,942,759 vaccines. Michigan is 9th nationwide for total vaccines administered, and our case count and positivity rates remain among the lowest in the country.
The state saw 35,000 tests per day last week. The UK is planning to allow pubs and restaurants to resume operations starting in April. Nicole Johnston reports from London.
We will begin to reopen our pubs and restaurants doors, but stay in.
Wow. It's almost complex, isn't it?
Sam Harrison has been waiting for weeks to find out when his London restaurant can reopen. But the news from British Prime Minister Boris Johnson wasn't quite what he'd been hoping for. A phased reopening, first outside and then indoors.
Those are quite strong phrases, aren't they? No earlier than. We're going to be opening outside in potentially in the middle of April, one of the wettest months of the year, still a cold month, and
So I think for a lot of restaurants, it just financially won't be viable. You know, we only get one shot really at reopening. We can't afford to get this wrong.
Yes, you can.
And talk about timing. This restaurant in its brand new kitchen only opened 4 months before the pandemic struck. Wine bar owner Sonny Hodge says knowing lockdown is ending is a massive relief, psychologically. But he doesn't agree with shops and gyms opening ahead of bars.
I think there's a big aspect of upset and anger at not fully understanding why we're not part of the non-essential shops opening up.
As for hair and beauty salons, they won't open until the 12th of April at the earliest. This salon is expecting business to boom.
A lot of people are struggling financially, but a lot of people, as you said, they are saving money and they cannot wait to spend those money as soon as they can.
The government says each phase of reopening will be announced with 1 week's notice. Sam Harrison says that's not enough.
It's pretty hard just to crank things up again. You know, we've been dead, sleeping, dormant. You can't just turn that tap on overnight. Surely they can give us more than a week's notice so that we're actually ready, because when we are able to open, we need to trade as strongly as we can. Every penny is going to count.
At least businesses now have dates on the horizon to work towards. But in these times, the next step in the pandemic can be just as unreliable as the British weather.
And that was Nicole Johnston in London. Beijing today getting cloudy skies and 10 degrees Celsius, a low of -2 this evening. Chongqing has a slight rainfall in 17, then dipping to 16. Last is sunny, 14, a low of 0. It's time for a short break. So far this hour, China expresses opposition to remarks about Xinjiang made by an official from the UK. China says it's ready to expand cooperation with the United States in the fields of economy and trade. And Cuba is set to be the first Latin American country to release its own COVID-19 vaccine. Shane Bigham with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday.
Now here's your host, Shane Bigham with you on this Thursday morning. Still to come in business, the Mobile World Congress in Shanghai. In sports, Manchester City continues its dominance. In culture and entertainment, 2 classic cartoon characters are staging a comeback. There are a number of ways to contact us. You can talk to us on Twitter at China Plus News or log on to Facebook, China Plus News, for more news, videos, and analysis. Now today's headlines. China's expressed firm opposition to British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab's remarks on Xinjiang at the 46th session of the UN Human Rights Council. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin has responded.
英方所谓就此通过决议的说法，显然是别有用心。
The British side's adoption of a resolution on this issue obviously has ulterior motives. Its purpose is to confuse the public and discredit China, and to undermine the cooperation between China and the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. We are firmly opposed to this.
Raab has called for UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet or another independent expert to be given urgent and unfettered access to Xinjiang, and said there should be a resolution at the council to this effect. Wang says China welcomes people from all over the world to visit Xinjiang. The spokesperson says in recent years, more than 1,200 diplomats, officials from international organizations, journalists, and religious figures from more than 100 countries have visited Xinjiang upon invitation. The Chinese foreign minister says the country is ready to enhance anti-pandemic cooperation with Sri Lanka. Wang Yi told his Sri Lankan counterpart over the phone that bilateral relations maintain strong momentum as the 2 countries fought against COVID-19 last year. The Sri Lankan diplomat said his country appreciates China's stance on human rights issues and is willing to help safeguard fairness and justice in regional and international affairs. The first batch of Sinovac vaccine from China has arrived in Singapore. Singapore has made advanced purchase agreements with Sinovac in addition to 2 other vaccine companies. The city-state government said earlier they're still assessing the Sinovac vaccine before it's rolled out to the public. Chinese officials said the country is ready to strengthen exchanges with the United States in economic and trade fields. Commerce Minister Wang Wentao says the essence of Sino-U.S. economic and trade relations is mutual benefit and win-win results, and the cooperation is the only correct choice for the 2 sides. Despite the global trade slump due to the COVID-19 pandemic, trade between China and the United States bucked the trend. Customs data shows that the bilateral trade of goods went up 8.8% in 2020. The official also says China is the largest trading partner of the United States, and the bilateral trade and investment cooperations contributed to their respective economic recoveries. China is expected to conduct more than 40 space launches this year. An official report says the construction of China's space station will enter a crucial stage this year, and China's Mars probe Tianwen-1 is due to complete its orbiting, landing, and roving operations. The report also says China will launch a number of satellites for civil space infrastructure. The core module of China's space station is expected to be launched this spring. 11 missions to build the space station are planned this year and next year. China conducted 39 space launches last year, sending 89 craft into space. U.S. President Joe Biden has met with a bipartisan group of lawmakers to discuss critical supply chain issues facing the country.
Last year has shown the vulnerability we have in some of the supply chain, including the PPE that we needed badly but had to go offline to get. And there are current strategies of these little chips here for automobiles causing some lines to slow down and people not being laid off, but at least shorten the shifts.
The meeting occurred shortly before Biden signed an executive order to review U.S. supply chains and boost domestic manufacturing jobs. The order will focus on 4 critical products such as semiconductor chips, large capacity batteries for electric vehicles, rare earth minerals, and pharmaceuticals. It'll also direct 6 sector reviews for defense, public health and biological preparedness, information communications technology, energy, and food production. The United States has been besieged by PPE supply shortages since the onset of the pandemic, while chip shortages have cost jobs in the auto industry. Ghana has become the first nation to receive vaccines from the World Health Organization's COVAX facility. UNICEF shipped 600,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine from India on Wednesday. And Claire Dufay is UNICEF's country representative in Ghana.
Today we are at the Kotoka International Airport in Accra, in Ghana, and this is really a historic moment. Today we are very happy to receive the first batch of COVID-19 vaccines through the COVAX facility.
Ghana has recorded more than 80,000 confirmed coronavirus cases and over 580 deaths since the start of the pandemic. The shipment is part of a first wave of coronavirus vaccines being sent to a number of low and middle income countries through COVAX. The COVAX initiative aims to ensure fair distribution and equal access to coronavirus vaccines to those in need worldwide. This is Shane Bigham live from the Chinese capital. Coming up in business, the Mobile World Congress in
Shanghai.
12?
We'll split it. 212 and retail. That pays for half of
Find
somebody
the
else's
Beijing Hour on social media. Talk to us on Twitter at the Beijing Hour or on Facebook at the Beijing Hour Official.
36 past the hour, turning to business now. Starting with the markets, U.S. stocks ended higher on Wednesday. The Dow rallied 1.4%. The S&P 500 increased by 1.1%. The NASDAQ rose 1%. Financial analyst Karen Pai.
So in the very short term, the markets may be, susceptible to market pullbacks, but our long-term view for most of this year is that the Fed remains supported. We have another large fiscal stimulus coming, and that should support consumers as well as corporations and hopefully small businesses as well. So the backdrop remains to be pretty constructive.
European markets finished higher on Wednesday with shares in London leading the region. The FTSE 100 was up by 0.5%. France's CAC 40 was up by 0.3%, and Germany's DAX is up by 0.2%. Stocks on the Chinese mainland closed lower on Wednesday, with the Shanghai Composite Index down nearly 2%. Market analyst Wang Lilan has more.
Mainland markets tumbled for another day today as investors sell their most loved stocks. The Shanghai Composite fell 2% to 3,564, while the tech board Chinex plummeted 3.4%. A-shares biggest listed from Kuichou Maotai investors are selling their shares at the fastest pace in 2 years. Maotai shares fell 5.1% today, taking its 5-day decline to more than 15%. Smaller Baijiu makers Luzhou Laojiao and Wuliangye Yibing are among the worst performers on the market. market. The Baijiu sector's valuations pre-Chinese New Year holiday were extremely high, so selling pressure was building up, but still the sharp rout has dampened investor sentiment. Another star company, battery maker CATL, plunged more than 8%. And the healthcare sector, also among the best performers pre-holiday, dropped 3% today. Analysts say triggers for the reversal also include concerns over tighter monetary policy from the central bank. Bucking the trend, home appliance makers were up. Rovan rose 4% after posting a 5.3% preliminary earnings growth for 2020. The deal was up 4.5% after announcing plans to repurchase as much as 14 billion yuan of its shares.
And that was market analyst Wang Liquan. Hong Kong stocks finished lower. The Hang Seng Index lost nearly 3%. Elsewhere in Asia, Singapore stocks closed higher yesterday, with the Straits Times Index going up nearly 1.2%. In Japan, Tokyo stocks closed lower on Wednesday, with electrical appliances, information and communication issues comprising those declining the most. And the Nikkei was down by 1.6%. The Shanghai edition of the Mobile World Congress trade show is going ahead with additional virus safety measures to keep the attendees safe. Organizers say leaders and exhibitors from over 200 companies are attending the annual conference. More than 20,000 visitors are expected to attend physically at Shanghai New International Expo Center. And many more are participating online in what organizers are calling a hybrid event. With more on this, Guanghao spoke to Chinese-American TV commentator and tech investor James Sung.
What do you think are likely to be the highlights of the Mobile World Congress in Shanghai this year?
The major highlight of Mobile World Congress, simply put, is that it still exists. Mobile World Congress has always been a top 10 technology show in the world. However, for 2021, I would venture to say that it is possibly the #1 technology trade show this year, simply because all other shows like CES have canceled their in-person element in the Americas and Europe. So this is a testament to China's leadership in controlling the pandemic. In fact, this year's show theme is Connected Impact, which alludes to utilizing the newest technologies in the global recovery process, including 5G connectivity, artificial intelligence, startup innovations, and connected industry, which refers to the next generation Internet of Things binding together the automotive, fintech, health, and manufacturing industries. China is leading the way in all these industries with solutions from companies such as ZTE, Huawei, and Oppo. Now, on the consumer side, Huawei announced the launch of the Huawei Mate X2 yesterday, a folding smartphone with a screen even bigger than Samsung's Galaxy Fold 2. Apparently, millions of units were sold out on the first day. Last year, Huawei overtook Samsung as the #1 smartphone maker in the world. They gave some amazing figures. There are over 1 billion connected Huawei IoT devices and more than 580 million monthly users on Huawei's mobile services software. All of this despite the U.S. sanctions trying to slow down this powerhouse. It certainly looks like they're unstoppable. Oppo is one of the up-and-coming stars as well. A lot of people have not heard of Oppo, but they certainly will. They've got one of the most international and powerful R&D teams in China, spending over $7 billion in just 3 years to innovate new technologies with over 10,000 R&D staff. They've applied for over 45,000 patents. They make beautiful and affordable mobile handsets that include a new rollable phone. That's right, it's a phone that rolls up instead of folding. And they've just showcased their new wireless air charging technologies, whereby a phone can be charged at super fast speeds without it being plugged in or even touching the wireless charging mat. Incredible innovations coming from Oppo at Mobile World Congress.
And that was TV commentator and tech investor James Sung, talking about the Shanghai edition of the Mobile World Congress. It's 43 past the hour. China stepping up efforts to protect intellectual property. Beijing signed protocol agreements with 30 patent review agencies across the globe last year. The deals reached by the National Intellectual Property Administration fall within the framework of the Patent Prosecution Highway. The program allows for patent applications to be examined across national jurisdictions. It's become an important way for Chinese applicants to seek patent protection in foreign markets. Chinese patent applicants had submitted over 9,000 requests through the program by the end of June last year. Manufacturers of home appliances in China are working hard to meet growing global demand. The market for goods such as television sets, refrigerators, and washing machines has expanded dramatically. One television manufacturer based in Shenzhen has seen a surge in international orders since last month. Wang Shuliang is human resources manager for the company, and he says they've had to hire more personnel to increase production.
To meet the growing need for production, we have recruited a number of temporary workers. The temporary workers now make up about 50% of our personnel. We are currently operating 4 production lines at an overall capacity of 80%. Just over the past few days, we produced enough units to fill an order of about 15,000 sets.
Analysts say the growing global demand is the result of many people being forced to stop working and spend more time at home amid COVID-19, increasing the use of electronics. China exported nearly 3.4 billion units of consumer electronics last year, and that was up 14% year-on-year. Ports across China are reporting robust growth in the amounts of cargo passing through. Cargo throughputs at the country's ports reached nearly 1.3 billion tons last month, up by 17% year-on-year. Authorities say one of the main reasons for the trend is the steady recovery of the economy. The Australian Senate has started debating amendments to landmark legislation expected to force Facebook and Google to pay media companies for news content. The debate comes as Facebook has said it will restore news pages to its users in Australia after blocking them earlier. Greg Navarro has more.
That last-minute deal was confirmed as the government apparently had enough support to pass the final bit of this legislation through Parliament. Now, as a result, Facebook says that it will start restoring Australian news media content back on its platform. You may remember.
No, I don't remember. Sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. No, wasn't that?
Sally Herships reports.
Last year, librarian Tenzing Kaosing had to move her story time online. She was so nervous, she remembers the exact day she had to make the switch.
April 19th, the night before my story time, I could not sleep. I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this?
Kaosing was used to reading stories in person, and now she'd be going on camera, streamed live on Facebook.
Worst thing is, when I get shy, my face turns really red. So then I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it.
But she did it.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Hello, good morning, everyone.
Still, Kaosing was right to be nervous. She had a pretty tough audience to impress. I know. I spoke with one of them. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
9-year-old Sujan Yuratsong. She has black, shoulder-length hair, a pink T-shirt with a heart, and one dimple. And when her mom suggested she watch Storytime, she had some serious doubts because she's in 4th grade.
Well, first, I honestly thought it was for babies, and I really didn't want to learn it because, in like American reading levels, I'm very high, like above my class, like not to brag or anything.
But this story time is bilingual, in English and Tibetan. Sujan's mom was a refugee from Tibet, one of tens of thousands who scattered around the globe. But Sujan was born here in Queens, so on the one hand, she's pretty American. Do you have a goal?
The real story that's there.
I want to be the first American woman president.
She loves Barbie and Harry Potter.
Potterheads for life.
Still, her heritage is Tibetan.
When people ask me to describe it, like I say, oh, I was born in America, but then my parents were Tibetans. So like I like to say it this way. My skin is American, but my blood is Tibetan.
In 1950, China invaded Tibet. Now it controls the region. Activists say China is trying to destroy Tibetan culture, banning the national flag, educating kids in Chinese. Tibetans fear their language will be lost. Here's Sujan's mom, Sering.
Without language, you cannot survive.
But it's not like Sujan can watch Netflix in Tibetan.
She had to go to school, everything is English.
So I was supposed to roll a joint and I didn't. Wow, I was...
Général demain.
In my head,
Pas d'annonce demain selon vous, ça arrête l'évoqueur.
à l'instant par Stéphane Vernet, c'est évidemment éminent pour tenir compte de l'économie, la situation économique, nous l'évoquerons dans la deuxième partie des informés, mais également le moral des Français, cette forme de lassitude généralisée, c'est une donnée centrale désormais.
Oui, et d'ailleurs, c'est juste avant de venir, je regardais les pétitions sur Changement, parce que c'est un peu mon baromètre. Et je pense qu'il y a une forme de lassitude et presque d'acception que de toute façon, ça va être compliqué. Donc, on n'a pas beaucoup de vagues de pétitions qui sont lancées contre un reconfinement ou pour la réouverture de certains lieux, ce qui est quand même significatif parce qu'à la même époque, il y a un an, on a eu une résurgence de pétitions qui était assez massive, 3 fois le nombre de pétitions qu'on a habituellement. Donc là, on voit qu'il y a je pense qu'il y a un peu une lassitude et puis on se dit, on ne se sent pas en capacité de se mobiliser à nouveau contre des décisions, même si on les supporte. Et une peur aussi, simplement, parce qu'on s'aperçoit que le virus tue. Oui, je ne sais pas si la peur, elle était, on en doutait pendant quelques mois.
Clément Lacombe, la dimension sociale, si je puis dire, ce moral des Français, cette lassitude, donnée centrale désormais.
Vont d'arriver jusqu'à chez vous en consultation.
Effectivement, il y a des gens qui pensent souvent quand ils ont été céphalées, surtout si elles sont localisées en région frontale, et ils vont voir des praticiens qui vont leur mettre des produits au niveau de la narine, disant qu'ils sont en train d'enlever soit des malédictions qu'elles auraient subies ou autre chose. Donc ça c'est très très fréquent.
Est-ce que justement, plus la migraine dans ces cas-là est prise en charge tardivement, plus c'est compliqué ou finalement ce facteur temps ne compte pas vraiment?
Plus elle est prise en charge tardivement, plus c'est compliqué parce que en fait, on doit faire une différentielle après entre le céphalée d'abus médicamenteux et la migraine elle-même. Et de plus souvent, ça devient un peu très compliqué de faire la différence entre une migraine réelle et plutôt des céphalées par abus médicamenteux.
Professeur Mathieu Zuber, c'est ce que vous expliquiez tout à l'heure, ce qui peut paraître assez incroyable quand on ne connaît pas bien la médecine et les médicaments, de penser que finalement, un médicament contre le mal de tête peut vous donner mal à la tête.
Absolument, mais c'est un point vraiment auquel il faut sensibiliser les gens par rapport à ce que vous disiez sur le traitement plus ou moins tôt. Il ne faut pas oublier que plus ça sera pris en charge tardivement, plus il y aura des conséquences psychologiques et vous parliez tout à l'heure des conséquences sociales, des retraits, tout ceci il sera difficile de revenir en arrière.
En termes de qualité de vie.
En termes de qualité de vie.
Docteur Tchalo, on vous retrouve à Douala au Cameroun. La prise en charge, alors c'est très important de savoir ce qui est à disposition des médecins et aussi à portée de porte-monnaie pour les patients. Qu'est-ce que vous proposez du côté de la prise en charge?
Du côté de la prise en charge, il existe à la disponibilité des traitements qui sont des médicaments spécifiques pour le traitement des crises, mais le coût est très exorbitant au niveau du Cameroun et c'est pas à la portée des populations. Donc nous, on utilise beaucoup plus les traitements non spécifiques tels que les anti-inflammatoires, kétoprophène, ibuprofène ou parfois diclofénac. Mais pour le traitement de fond, on utilise beaucoup plus de la nitroxyline et parfois la venlafaxine.
Ça veut dire que les gens qui viennent, est-ce qu'elles sont au courant qu'il existe justement ces traitements de fond? Parce que c'est un petit peu tout ce qu'on a vu tout à l'heure avec les auditrices. Elles savaient que dans l'armoire à pharmacie, on peut avoir du paracétamol, pour les anciennes générations même de l'aspirine, voire des médicaments codéinés avec le risque d'accoutumance que l'on connaît. Mais savoir qu'il y a un traitement de fond, est-ce que les gens qui viennent vous voir ont connaissance justement de cette possibilité?
Non, du tout pas.
Pas du tout.
Je pense que les gens pensent souvent qu'en prenant quelque chose qui calme pour 10 minutes, ils ont pris un traitement.
Alors, à côté des médicaments, il y a tout ce qui relève de la prévention. Est-ce que vous faites des propositions en ce sens, docteur Tchalo, notamment pour identifier les facteurs déclenchants? Est-ce qu'il y a une vraie démarche de prévention en matière de prise en charge de la migraine?
Oui, quand on arrive à recevoir ces patients, on essaie de leur faire un conseil sur le mode de vie et sur l'hygiène de vie, notamment en leur conseillant de ne pas avoir des crises d'hypoglycémie parce que le phénomène de gène est très répandu dans nos pays. Quand quelqu'un a un problème, il pense qu'il doit faire cette vie de gène pour pouvoir demander à Dieu de l'aider. Et donc, il faut éviter les tenir. Ce qui fait qu'il ne faut pas sauter les repas. Et il doit avoir un sommeil qui est régulier, 6 heures à 8 heures de sommeil par jour. Évidemment, éviter le stress, réduire le stress. Donc, à peu près, on essaie de leur dire ça, de ne pas faire de veillées, de prières, comme si nous font souvent dans l'attente du sommeil.
Merci beaucoup, docteur Benjamin Chalon. On perçoit bien toutes les spécificités en fonction des différents contextes qui peuvent favoriser ou non la survenue des crises de migraine. Je rappelle que vous êtes neurologue à l'hôpital général de Douala au Cameroun. Ce point du sommeil, professeur Mathieu Zuber, c'est important d'insister dessus parce que très souvent, après une mauvaise nuit, après une insomnie, eh bien, le migraineux ou la migraineuse va passer une très mauvaise journée.
Oui, c'est possible. Alors, c'est compliqué parce que après une mauvaise nuit, quelqu'un qui n'est pas migraineux peut avoir des maux de tête qui sont d'allure banale, qui ne sont pas des migraines. Mais pour un migraineux, effectivement, c'est souvent facteur d'accroissement de ces migraines. Donc, parmi les conseils que l'on donne, c'est ce qui a été dit, des conseils de bonne hygiène de vie. Ne pas sauter les repas, c'est aussi important. C'était important que le collègue le dise parce que les hypoglycémies, la baisse du sucre, sont facteurs de déclenchement de migraine.
Et puis, il y avait le nom de ces différents traitements cités, avec les traitements, on va dire, de dernière génération, qui en France sont accessibles puisqu'on a la sécurité sociale et qu'on a en général de bons remboursements des médicaments. C'est pas forcément aussi accessible partout sur la planète, non seulement parce qu'il y a la question du coût, parce qu'il n'y a pas de remboursement, et puis aussi simplement parce que des fois aussi il y a des ruptures d'approvisionnement. On peut dire que c'est quand même une prise en charge à 2 vitesses.
Un peu, et c'est pour ça, je trouve, et ce qui est intéressant dans tous les témoignages qu'on a entendus, qu'il faut particulièrement insister sur les traitements de fond. Peut-être plus encore que dans une population plus favorisée, ayant accès à des traitements plus chers.
Parce qu'avec les molécules qu'a cité tout à l'heure le docteur Benjamin Chaleux, il y a déjà de quoi contrôler, il y a déjà de quoi soulager.
Absolument, propranolol, amitriptyline, ces traitements de fond sont des traitements qui marchent bien et qui éviteront d'avoir recours aux traitements de crise. Un point important, je trouve, on a beaucoup parlé de médicaments, on n'a pas parlé de des traitements non médicamenteux. C'est très important d'avoir en tête qu'un migraineux a souvent une personnalité un peu anxieuse, un peu tendue, et donc agir dessus par des techniques de relaxation,
de respiration,
en dehors de ces périodes de migraine, arriver, alors que ce soit par de la kinésithérapie, par de la sophrologie, par du yoga, par toutes sortes de techniques, à se détendre plus, permet souvent d'agir. C'est un complément important des médicaments.
On parlait tout à l'heure des médicaments innovants, et j'ai envie de vous poser cette question, et demain, est-ce qu'il y a vraiment des terrains de recherche particuliers en ce moment?
La migraine fait partie de ces terrains en neurologie qui donnent lieu à une recherche médicamenteuse intense. Alors, on parle beaucoup de ce qu'on appelle les anti-CGRP actuellement. Ce sont des antirécepteurs, peu importe les détails, mais qui demain pourraient faire qu'un traitement de fond est un traitement qui s'injecte en sous-cutané tous les 15 jours ou tous les mois. Et on est débarrassé des médicaments tous les jours. Pour l'instant, c'est des traitements qui ne sont pas remboursés, vont être chers, mais qui, on sait, petit à petit deviendront plus communs. Donc il y a vraiment de l'avenir dans les traitements et de quoi soulager de plus en plus à mesure qu'on comprend mieux les mécanismes profonds biochimiques de la migraine.
Vous le disiez, on a beaucoup parlé des médicaments. Est-ce que, professeur Mathieu Zuber, la question clé de la dépendance, du risque de dépendance, c'est quelque chose qui fait partie intégrante d'une consultation contre la migraine. Forcément, le patient va lui dire attention, ne pas abuser de certaines substances.
Ah oui, c'est un point sur lequel on insiste beaucoup. Vous savez, la céphalée par abus de médicaments, dans les classifications de toutes les céphalées, elle existe, elle est bien identifiée. C'est quelque chose à part entière. Et donc, les médecins interrogent quelle est la quantité, et puis on fixe des objectifs. Comment on arrive à décroître petit à petit. Petit à petit, c'est difficile. Les gens qui prennent depuis des années 5 comprimés contenant de la codéine par jour, on en voit, vont avoir du mal à baisser. Et il faut les accompagner, leur donner un traitement de fond. Parfois, on les hospitalise même. Mais on y arrive. Et on leur rend service, évidemment.
Et ces personnes, en général, elles sont arrivées à cette dépendance par beaucoup d'automédication, ou derrière, il y a une prescription et il y a un médecin qui a signé
ordonnance sur ordonnance?
D'une manière générale, il y a beaucoup d'autodécision. Des personnes qui parfois vont voir plusieurs médecins pour avoir plusieurs ordonnances et couvrir leur quantité de médicaments quotidiens. Donc je crois vraiment que en tous les cas en France, il y a une sensibilité des médecins à ce risque d'abus de médicaments, sûrement dans la plupart des pays. Mais les personnes ont parfois des parcours chaotiques pour obtenir des médicaments et arriver à se faire prescrire des quantités qu'on n'imagine pas de médicaments, notamment contenant des opiacés.
Et tout à l'heure, vous disiez justement, insister, ce sera notre dernier échange, sur éventuellement la méditation, la respiration, tout ce qui peut être anti-stress. Est-ce que c'est aujourd'hui quelque chose qui est conseillé un peu systématiquement ou c'est quelque chose qui commence juste, ça fait...
This. To me, this film is trying to talk about the things that last versus the things that don't last, and whether the American dream fits in that or not, I think I leave that up to viewers. But I think that thing you find in the Minari patch, I mean, that's going to feed you. That's going to stay with you.
I love it. Lee Isaac Chung's new movie is called Minari. Thank you so much for sharing this time with us.
Thank you so much, Elsa.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, where research showed how the immune system can be enabled to attack cancer cells. This led to treatments for Hodgkin lymphoma, melanoma, and other cancers. DanaFarber.org/everywhere. From Fisher Investments Wealth Management, offering guidance on retirement income, Social Security, and estate planning. More at FisherInvestments.com. Clearly different money management. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. And from Subaru, whose Subaru Love Promise program donated 50 million meals to Feeding America in 2020 and has pledged to donate another 100 million to support those still in need.
Shock FM, here we go.
All the time,
Tell me you're switching to all Not for long, not with that.
想喝点什么？
一杯橙汁，谢谢。
一杯。
Keywords reminder. Would you like to dance? 能跳支舞吗？ Let me buy you a drink, okay? 我请你喝一杯，好吗？ What would you like to drink? 想喝点什么？ Now it's time for our question of the day. How do you say, let me buy you a drink, okay, in Chinese?
We'll see you tomorrow.
明天见。
You wave money at her and yell things very slowly and loudly in English. Everybody's offended.
You're listening to China Plus Radio, connecting you with China and the world.
Now the news. I'm Shane Bickham. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin says the return of the United States to the lifting of sanctions against Iran hold the key to breaking the impasse on the Iranian nuclear issue.
That much, Officer Obvious? I know, in about 2 minutes we're going to lose the audio
The Iranian nuclear
again, right?
issue is at a critical juncture with both opportunities and challenges. China believes that the return of the U.S. to the JCPOA and the lifting of sanctions on Iran are the keys to breaking stalemate of the Iranian nuclear issue.
Iran announced on Tuesday that it'll immediately restrict on-site inspection.
You think I can see the screen?
Atomic Energy Agency. Huang says China attaches great significance to the Iranian nuclear issue. China is expected to conduct more than 40 space